First off, guys, I'm going to say that this movie, Cabin Fever 2002, it is not simply a rotten film. It is a film that was produced for the actual purpose of producing a rotten film. That's what this is about. It's not supposed to be taken seriously. It is more a comedy than a horror, although it is still a horror because it has plenty of gore. Cabin Fever 2002, 62% on the tomato meter, 44% on the audience score. It has 140 critics on this that 62% of them had good things to say. There are 250,170 audience reviews as of the first week of January 2020. This movie is not a forgotten film. In fact, it's more of a cult classic at this point. I would say yes, it's going to continue to be a cult classic because this wasn't made like for the purpose of making a horror film that people would be scared and hopefully it would do good at the box office. No, this horror film was made to be a cheesy kind of make fun of horror films film, and that's exactly what it is, and that's what it achieved. And if you doubt what I'm saying, you don't even need to watch the whole film. Just go to the very last few minutes of it where the credits begin to roll, and the film will outright show you that this was not supposed to be taken seriously. So let's get into the audience reviews, and I'm going to read everything with a 3-star and below because this is rotten reviews and this is a rotten film, even on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm going to say that normally I compile quite a list of problems with a film, plot holes, other things that really rubbed me the wrong way while I was watching it. And in this case, I did the same thing, but then I figured, what's the point? Because everything I'm going to find wrong with this film was done in a deliberate way to be a problem. And a lot of it is laugh out loud funny, and a lot of it is not, just depending on your own sense of humor. And we're going to find a lot of that in these reviews, but let's start right off the top with a review from November 4, 2019. 2 stars, cheap horror at its not so finest. Okay. I will say it is cheap. The budget is not high, but it was made to be cheap. They weren't trying to do something else. They weren't trying to give you something that was outside the realm of a low-budget flick, outside the realm of a B movie. Everything in this was making fun of its own genre, so to speak. So 2 stars, yes, it could be 2 stars. It would really depend on how the comedy struck you. If you didn't find very much funny in it, or if, heaven help you, you actually tried to take this film seriously, you're going to find it 2 stars and below, no question about that. Myself, I knew what it was trying to do, so I say 2.5 stars. I can't give it 3 because it didn't laugh enough, but that could change. Maybe if I had started this, and I was 2 beers into a 6-pack, I would have laughed a lot more. But I laughed enough at the stuff going on, despite the heavy gore, that I would say 2.5 stars is what I think would be fair, peaking out at 2.5. But 2, I can accept that. I'm not going to argue against somebody saying that it's 2. Let's move down. I'm not going to read 4- and 5-star reviews. It's not all that. 3 stars, August 25, 2019. Low budget, campy, sleazy, non-apologetic horror comedy. Comedy with a question mark, because I think some people don't know that it's supposed to be comedy. Nothing new really, or nothing really new, just an homage, I assume, to classic horrors. Plenty of blood, guts, and gore. Bizarre and quite funny in places, also so incredibly stupid. The characters were all unlikable, the story was cliched, and the surprises were all very expected, but I kind of enjoyed it. Cult classic type. Remember, don't drink water, drink beer, it may save your life. I largely agree entirely with that review. They weren't quite sure it was supposed to be a comedy, but I'm going to tell you, this was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be gross on top of it, but kind of make you kind of go over the top with the gore in a stupid way that would make you laugh, and that didn't quite work with me. I found it a little gross, and I didn't laugh at that, but I was sober, so, your mileage might vary if you've been drinking. But, yeah, it was bizarre. All the characters were unlikable. It's not more than 20 minutes into this where you realize every single character in this film is some kind of sociopath, and once they're in this cabin in the woods, they're in a position to prove that they are sociopaths, the way they treat each other, the sympathy they have for each other. They're definitely unlikable characters. They're supposed to be. There are no good guys. There's a guy that survives at the very end, and like this reviewer says, you get the message at the end that the one character that advised everybody to just spend the whole weekend drinking beer instead of drinking water, he's the one that lives to the end, but in the end he dies too. But he had actually had the correct idea. They should have all just stuck to drinking beer the entire time. Actually, they might have survived because a lot of the dumb stuff they would have done, they wouldn't have done because they would have been too drunk to do this dumb stuff. Everything they do is dumb. They do it in a way that not only are they dumb, but they're almost evil. They're sociopaths at the same time. The stuff they do to innocent people, so to speak. And the police that show up, they're complete villains and psychopaths, and everybody in this, even the people in town or at the store that's in the town, they're unlikable. Actually, there is one old man character that's presented as an unlikable racist villain at the very beginning. He's the keeper of this shop in the area of the town. And at the end, he's the only one that's shown to be a likable guy. He's not a racist after all, and he's actually, the movie kind of tricked you into thinking he was, and he's actually the only good guy in this whole film. Everybody else is a sociopath or a psychopath, and I liked the way the movie did that at the very end, but that's assuming that the audience can get to the end, because if they didn't know this film was supposed to be a crazy ass comedy, they probably wouldn't have made it to the end. But if you don't believe me, if you think this is supposed to be taken serious, don't try to watch the whole thing. If you haven't seen it before, just go right to where the credits begin, and after you see that, then go back and watch it from the beginning, and you might appreciate it more, because you're going to go into it knowing that it's not to be taken seriously. 2 stars, July 15, 2019. This film has a fair amount of tension and suspense generated by the spread of the disease, but in the end it is a very banal film without particular inspiration, that from a few or no explanation to the disease and behavior of citizens. Yeah, there's no explanation to this. These college age characters that don't like college, they tell you straight out at the beginning, fuck college. That's their attitude. So they go off to this cabin in the woods that they've booked through some fly-by-night vacation company, and the water's been contaminated, and actually the water wasn't contaminated at the beginning, but by their own actions, they make sure their water supply that their drinking water is coming from is contaminated by some deadly flesh-eating disease. Who knows what it is? It doesn't matter. It's all the crazy stuff that happens as a result of this disease popping up in the story that makes it interesting. It drives the plot forward. The characters are complete sociopaths. They all end up getting killed off in the end. And it's basically all there is to it. But the characters, there's the suspension and the tension. Just when the film has a situation that could be suspenseful or scary, it kind of just makes it over the top, goofy and stupid. And it's not a scary film, really. It is very gross at parts, but it is straight up comedy. I'm sorry. It is just meant to be funny. It is not meant to be giving you any kind of a scare. There aren't jump scares, for example. It's not trying to do that. It's just trying to gross you out at times, but do it in kind of comedy, sexual ways. It's hard to explain, but it's not to be taken seriously. 3 stars, solid early 2000s fun. The gore is gross enough, and the ridiculous dialogue and character personalities are quite amusing. Yeah, they are. There's one character at the beginning wearing a green baseball hat that he seems like he would be your likable, stupid action type of guy, but then not only is he shown to be very dumb, but he's doing things that are outright evil to innocent people, but still being this dumb, likable person at the same time. And there's nobody likable in this. Everybody's a sociopath. It may take you longer to see it in some of the characters, but every single one of them is no good. And by the time the movie gets to the end, you know this completely. They all deserve to die pretty much, and that's what the movie told you at the end. 2.5 stars, December 20, 2018. Okay, horror flick. Relies on grossing you out to mask the dumbass cliche characters and bad writing. It sounds like that reviewer took this serious, and he shouldn't have. 3 stars, September 24, 2018. Cabin Fever isn't the best example of modern horror, but does offer a few bloody moments of fun, even when the stupidity and poor acting get in the way. It's supposed to be stupid. Again, I think they're taking this serious, and it's too bad there wasn't some sort of flashback to what happened at the end, or showing you some more. They should have shown, this director should have shown something from the ending of this movie, what he did with the end credits. He should have put some of that up front at the very beginning of the beginning credits. If he had done that, it would have kind of made it better, because it would have kept people from trying to take this serious as long as they did, obviously. 1.5 stars, 1.5 out of 5. Cabin Fever has some awesome gore and a few solid sequences, but the characters suck, they make terrible decisions, and the humor falls flat. Yeah, because you took it serious. You thought this was supposed to be a serious horror movie, and if you just, there is one thing I can give these people credit for. Maybe they saw who directed this film and they took it serious, because if we go back to the front page here and I scroll down to the movie info section, and it's going to tell you it was directed by Eli Roth. Well, Eli Roth, he actually makes a couple of cameo appearances in this film as well. Um, he is not. He is also involved in the Hostel film series, Eli Roth, and those are not supposed to be comedies. Now, if you had seen his other work, you would think, oh, this is like supposed to be a brutal, gory, psychologically disturbing horror film, and because you see Eli Roth's name on the directed by, and you see him as written by, he's one of the two writers, so you would think, yeah, this is supposed to be serious, it's R-rated, but no, I'm sorry, this is straight up comedy. And Eli Roth's character in this, he plays two characters, but one's a flashback character. His character ends up mauled and half eaten by a bear, and he's dispatched with relatively quick. He does play, you got to hand it to him, Eli Roth, in his roles. He does play the creepiest weirdo type of pervo type person that you wouldn't want near your parties, but he shows up to the party in this, but he's dispatched by a bear, like kind of off camera. But yeah, I can kind of sympathize with the people that came along with this thinking that, they saw Hostel and thought this was along that line. No, this is straight up making fun of those type of movies. So let's move on. 1.5 stars, bad acting, bad writing, bad direction, dog shit. Yeah, because you took it serious. 2.5 stars, April 24, 2018. Its self-awareness make it worth a watch for fans of Eli Roth, but even for the most ardent supporters, there's an admittedly significant amount of nonsensical narrative points and flat-out stupid moments. Yeah, it could have done some of the comedy better. It kind of diverted a little bit, and it went in a couple of directions. Like, a couple of the characters they make a half-ass attempt. They're very dumb characters. They do make a half-ass attempt to escape from their circumstances. The most cursory half-ass attempt that a lazy teenager would make. They're really not trying to escape the cabin in the woods, not seriously at least. But in any case, they kind of divert off to some other things during their very surface level escape attempts. And yeah, that's kind of a fail, because there's not enough comedy to be found in that. I didn't really laugh at any of that stuff. But it's neither here nor there. I mean, comedies vary. Comedy's even more subjective than horror is. Comedy hits some people in some ways, and, I see it and I just don't laugh one time, and other people are laughing out loud like crazy. So again, chalk it up to comedy that's either going to hit right or it's not for you. But this is a straight up attempt at comedy. It's not supposed to be scary. Self-aware, yes, at parts it's self-aware. It's like it's deliberately making fun of itself, but other parts it's like it's taking itself serious. Yeah, it's kind of schizophrenic like that. But again, maybe go into this after, you've had a couple of beers already, and you might just find the whole thing wacky enough to be enjoyable. Half a star, April 21, 2018. One of the worst movies I've seen. They didn't die fast enough. Yeah, if you were going into this thinking you would find, some character or two to sympathize with that you wanted to see escape the cabin in the woods, no, no, no. You're supposed to not want them to escape. You have characters that put another character that's obviously sick and needs medical help. They just lock her in an old shed and then promise her they'll be right outside to keep watch on her, and then they just walk away and leave her out there and don't even check on her one time. And the whole movie's like that. All these characters are self-absorbed sociopaths, and they care much more about getting laid than even saving themselves at some points, and the movie makes fun of that too. There's a lot of that in horror films, young adult type horror films where everybody's getting killed off while they're having sex and etc. And this movie has one female character she's just so horny all the time that her body's already got this flesh-eating disease, and she's still planning on who she's going to sleep with next. And it's just, it's just a comedy. You can't take this serious, but it's making fun of a lot of stuff in other horror films. Half a star, February 2018. The worst movie I've ever seen. I'm unsure which is worst, the awful directing or writing, or the fact that Eli Roth was ever allowed near another film ever again. Yeah, because he's making fun of his own film genre. That's why. You're not supposed to take this seriously. 2.5 stars, January 2018. Pretty much a typical Eli Roth movie. Overdo it with the blood and guts to mask the stupidity of it all. Well, I don't agree. Again, you're taking it serious. I think the gore could have been toned down, and the comedy would have been more effective. For me, that's why some of it wasn't funny, because there was a little bit too much gore when it should have been a little bit lighter. I don't know, for some people maybe it works like that. But yeah, that was a big flaw for me in this. I think I would have laughed a lot more if there was less gore, particularly with stuff I had seen before. I mean, you already know this flesh-eating disease and what it's going to do to people, but it kind of shows you the same stuff a few too many times, when it could have been concentrating more on the comedy aspect of it. 1 star, October 16, 2017. LOL, was this movie supposed to be bad? Because it was really bad. Yes, it was supposed to be bad, but you were supposed to laugh. 2.5 stars, October 9, 2017. We're more than 2 years back in time. Dumb horror movie directed by Eli Roth. He's a pretty bad director, but he's getting there. I'll never forget how cringe this movie is. Yeah, but it's not cringeworthy if you just don't take it serious. I mean, come on. If there's a part at which this completely over-the-top, dumb and stupid police character shows up riding a bicycle, and he thinks he's in charge of the scene, so to speak, and he's riding a bicycle. He's a bicycle cop in the middle of nowhere in the woods. I mean, you're still taking this seriously? Really? Come on now. At what point do people need to get the clue that this is not supposed to be serious? 2.5 stars, October 9, 2017. I read that one already, sorry. 3 stars, October 3rd, 2017. Pros, interesting plot. Decent gore. Writer strong is likable enough. Somewhat satisfying ending with strong bleeding out in the water and infecting it. Cons, the writing isn't great. I cringed when Strong abruptly tried telling the blonde he likes her. The frat boy, stoner, and deputy characters are a little too cartoonish for a horror movie. The directing and editing felt clumsy even for a low-budget film. And did I hear a white dude say the N-word at the end of the film? No, you heard a white dude say the N-word at the beginning of the film, and then at the end of the film you find out he wasn't actually a bad guy. But you would know that if you sat through the whole film, but you probably didn't. Yes, it was supposed to be a frat boy, a stoner, and deputy characters, and they were supposed to be cartoonish. That's exactly what they were supposed to be. Even the opening scene, there's a scene that has, kind of a disconnected feel from the rest of the movie, where somebody that lives out in a rural area, they come upon their dog that is laying there on its side, and you can see that the dog is obviously dead. Now, this is the opening scene of the actual film, the first opening scene. And you can tell that the dog is dead. It's obviously dead. You can tell it's a dead dog. There's no mistaking a dead dog laying there with its mouth open, its tongue hanging out, its eyes bulged out. It's dead. It's probably a prop, but it's obviously dead. And this character is trying to talk to it like it's just tired and needs to get up. And then suddenly he realizes it's dead and then goes down to look at it closer. And when he finds some kind of cut on its belly, he opens it up and it opens like the lid of a clamshell and some blood squirts all over his face. And then he freaks out and runs away. You can tell that it's comedy. There's nothing serious about it. That's your clue from the beginning. But I think it wasn't enough for a lot of people, and so they still took it serious for whatever reason, because there are a lot of bad horror films out there that really are attempting to be serious, and they have stupid stuff like that in them, just like that. And I think that's maybe why it failed, because it doesn't give you a strong enough clue. It doesn't differentiate itself from so many other bad horror films that you're not supposed to take this seriously. So you go into it with a serious mindset, and if you do, then yeah, you're left just trying to critique this seriously, and you'll consider it complete garbage and wonder how the director ever worked again, and etc. But if this director had done a little bit more of what he did at the end of it, at the beginning, and give you a stronger clue that it's not to be taken seriously, then I think it would have solved a lot of that. But the opening scene, it could have actually been a serious opening scene from a lot of other really bad horror films, and that's the problem with trying to make fun of horror films. A lot of them are just unintentionally funny because they're just so shit. They're so bad and low quality. This one is not one of those. Just go into this knowing it's making fun of all those films. It tried to tell you at the beginning, but it's not that effective. That's what I'm trying to say. 2.5 stars, August 12, 2017. A decent mix of genre, homage, and some well-done practical effects aren't enough to keep Cabin Fever from feeling mediocre and lackluster. I don't know if they took it serious or not. They did say genre homage. Um, there's a part where two characters, one of them is one of them's a police officer, and another one is one of our college frat boys. And they're both looking at a truck that's obviously splattered with blood all over the front and sides of it. I mean, there's so much blood splattered on it that we know in the real world, a police officer he would have serious problems just looking at it because he knows a crime has been committed. Yet this police officer looks at it and only sees some minor damage on the grill and the bumper and comments on that and completely ignores all the blood. Well, that's not to be taken seriously. Stuff like that in this film. You just can't take it serious. And if you were still taking it serious at that point, a lot of comedy is going to be lost on you, not just in this film, that's for sure. 2.5 stars, November 26, 2016. A revolting and cliched low-budget gore film. Maybe if Cabin Fever was more of a satire of its genre, then I could have enjoyed it. It was a satire of its genre. What movie were you watching? It obviously didn't work for you, because that's exactly what this was. 0.5 star, October 22nd, 2016. We are back 3 years back in time. One of the dumbest movies I've ever seen, or that I've seen. The best part is the chick's ass. Yeah, the movie concentrates. It puts the camera deliberately on this girl as she's walking around looking for help. It deliberately puts the camera on her body and on her ass to show you her tight ass and her pants. It's deliberate. It's making fun of horror movies that do the same thing. And it is nice to look at. And this is the same character that has sex with two different characters for no apparent reason, but yet doesn't want to be called a slut. But she is in every way. And the movie's straight up making fun of other movies that have characters like this, and that's what it's doing. And it is nice to look at her, but then again, it makes fun of that too. It puts her in a bathtub and has her shaving her very nice looking legs, and it's definitely so that you'll enjoy looking at this. And then it also shows you her shaving over the rotted flesh part of her legs too, to get rid of your excitement in a really nasty way. And it's just straight up doing this to screw with the audience. It's like trolling you, as it were. definitely. 3 stars, August 23rd, 2016. Cabin Fever was mostly gory, not scary at all. It has decent performance, great 80s homage. However, it is silly at times. The story was okay and it was predictable. Again, you're taking it a little too seriously. It's not really an homage. It's making fun of a lot of movies from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. They are straight up just, there are many horror films straight up worse than this one that are completely serious, and they're way dumber than this. And it's been going on for decades, and yet, for some reason, even going back to the 60s, they've been making horror films that are just completely bad, but yet they still make money. People still pay money, and this director's making fun of it that they're making horror movies every year, just cranking them out like on an assembly line. They're all completely stupid and bad, yet people are still putting enough money into them that they're making a profit with their low budgets. They're making 500% profit and more. Some of them are making 2,000, 3,000% return on their investment. And you guys keep buying the tickets to it out there. So congratulations. This movie's making fun of all these people that buy tickets, and it's trolling every one of these rather lowbrow people that buy these bad movie tickets. 3 stars, July 13, 2016. Great fresh idea and plot. Really? It was really interesting for the first 35 to 40 minutes, but it got super predictable, and the acting in it was meh bad. It's a decent watch. Again, you're taking this seriously, and you actually took it serious for 35 to 40 minutes and thought it was good. The opening scene or two wasn't enough for you to tell you this wasn't supposed to be good. Wow. 2.5 stars, May 27, 2016. Cabin Fever is a weird movie. Yes, it is. In its core, I think it actually kinda is a spoof of scary movies. Kinda. It's more than kinda. It plays some cliches on a way that they seem ridiculous. Acting and dialogues are terrible, and the completely unexpected and out-of-tone ending scene makes the theory stronger. Oh, you think it does? That's why I say go to the end credits first. You'll see this isn't supposed to be serious. And you're still questioning it, having seen the end credits, of whether this was supposed to be serious. I mean, wow, you have to be pretty damn dense. I mean, your head, it must be like made out of adamantium, like Wolverine or something. Bullets are going to bounce off your skull. There no being any real killers or beasts to fear. You question if it's really a horror movie or just a thriller. And yet, germophobia is such a real fear nowadays that it can definitely be a very scary movie. Not to watch, but to feel scared after watching. I'm sorry, but like I said, your skull is made out of some kind of exotic, unpenetratable armor, because this isn't going to get through to you, I don't think. 0.5 star, May 22nd, 2016. This movie is horrible. 3 stars, May 16th, 2016. Certainly Eli Roth's best movie, and I know that's not saying a lot considering his track record. Cabin Fever is one of those movies that feels like it was written by a teenager trying to be edgy and adult by throwing in tons of gore and nudity, but without the slightest hint of self-awareness. In most movies, this would be extremely annoying. In this case, however, it actually works in its favor, sort of. Eli Roth certainly has a passion for horror movies, that much is true. Unfortunately, that passion, again, you're thinking he set about to make a horror film, but he set about to make fun of his own horror films. At first, I thought you knew that, and then you kind of told me you didn't know that. 3 stars, April 8th, 2016. Started watching for cliches, but then seeing some may find predictable, I found unexpected. Because horror isn't really my go-to genre, so I'm new to a lot of these tropes. Overall, the film was bloody, and you had to use your imagination for a lot of the scenes. Like Serena Vincent being torn up by a dog, it's blurred out, but Foley and screaming had me covering the screen during that scene. The one scene that stuck with me is Karen's face being eaten by the dog. That seems to happen when you see, yeah, it's like, it's not, it's gory, but yeah, it's kind of making fun of the way cheap horror movies do it. They don't have the budget to show you a dog actually ripping somebody apart in detail, so they kind of just have the dog chewing on one part of them and have a little bit of practical effects for that. And then the camera cuts away and shows like, arms and legs and feet like flopping over and being thrown in different directions. That's making fun of the way a lot of cheap B horror movies do it. They just have body parts flying off and blood spraying against walls, but they don't have the budget to actually show you the wounds, doing this themselves. So yeah, it's just making fun of that. It's like people just don't get it. Partly it's the director's fault because the opening scene meant to tell you that it's not serious. It's not quite enough different from other serious films. So that's a fail, but definitely the end credits prove that this was not to be taken seriously. 44% on the audience score. I kind of still agree with that because this is still rotten. I didn't laugh enough at it. If I had laughed at this, if I had gone into this sober like I did, and just had, several occasions where I laughed out loud. I didn't. I only had like maybe one or two. I would consider this not being worthy of a rotten score, but I didn't laugh enough at this. I really didn't, and I should have. And so I'm going to say, yeah, I think 44% it's fair. And 62% on the tomato meter, I'm really impressed. I'm surprised by that 62% of 140 critics had good things to say about this. They said it was good. Again, most of them apparently do realize that this is not supposed to be a horror. It's supposed to be a comedy or a satire. So I'm going to say that, yes, it's a satire. And I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.